Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you said anything before I was let into the room, I didn't hear it because the system doesn't allow me to do that. But
No worries. No worries.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute. It might be appropriate to get that in front of the committee, I believe.
Senator.
I will make the, Mr. Chairman, Senator Surovell, I will make the committee substitute available right away. Would you like me to explain it as well?
Would you please?
Yes, no problem. So the bill, as you know, increases motor vehicle liability insurance coverage. The original bill had that limit raised to $50,000 for death or injury of one person, $100,000 for death or injury of two people, and $40,000 for destruction of property. This bill makes a change so that those amounts would be changed from 2022 to 2024 to an amount of $30,000 for death or injury of one person. Sorry, $60,000 for death or injury of two people and $25,000 for destruction of property. As such, and then starting in 2024, we see the amounts that were in the original bill come into play. The higher numbers of $50,000, $100,000, and $40,000. As such, the second enactment clause was stricken, and then there's a tiny additional technical change. Substitute.
And what's the technical change?
It's said motorist instead of motorists.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's in line 59 of the original and line 84 in the substitute, which you should be able to see in just a second.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the substitute?
Move the substitute.
Second.
Delegate Sowell moves. Delegate Guttis seconds. All of the substitutes before us. All in favor by say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Senator Surovell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Bill 1182 is a bill that you all saw last year, I believe. This is a different twist on it. Basically, this number that we have in the code hasn't changed since I was 4 years old in 1975. 1975, the average car cost about $4,400. The average person made $11,800. And if you look at a time value of money equation, the time value of $25,000 today on a basic rate of inflation would be $120,000. Time value of money, if you use medical inflation, would be $262,000. So with the numbers in this bill, we're not even coming within 20% of what the inflationary rate of medical expenses, which largely drives auto settlements, would reflect. I just want to say, this bill was generated, this discussion has been going on for about 3 or 4 years. There's a DMV study. The DMV study looked at how much this would increase the price of premiums. They said that on a $700 a year policy, which would minimum policy cost for young adult males would be about a 9% increase, or about $63, or about 17 cents a day. We have a minimum wage kicking in on May the 1st. It's going to bring people way more than $63 a year. Another important part of the study, the DMV study, was they looked at other states. I thought it was very fascinating that in the state of Maine, which has a $50,000 minimum, they have the lowest uninsured population in America. Whereas in the state of Florida, which has the lowest minimum of $10,000, they have the largest uninsured population in America. So at least statistically, the number of uninsured drivers seems to operate in reverse to what you would think. I'd also just note, by the way, in the European Union, that the minimum policy limit in the European Union is $1 million per victim, $5 million per claim. So we're like a fraction of Europe. And Mr. Chairman, the other thing I would just say to you really quick is last month I requested some data from DMAS, from Medicaid, from our Medicaid provider, our Medicaid administrator. They told me that between 2018 and 2020, they asserted about $4.5 million of liens against 113 cases that had $25,000 minimum policies. And that meant there was only $2.8 million of coverage available. So in other words, the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, is losing out, on somewhere between, I would say, $750,000 to $1.5 million a year in recovering our Medicaid monies because these policies, $25,000 policy minimums. We need to get this number up. It's way overdue. And Mr. Chairman, it came out with bipartisan support in the Senate. I would hope the committee would adopt the bill, especially with the amendments we just made.
Thanks, Senator. Questions for the patron?
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sullivan.
Yeah, I've just now been able to pull this up. I'm sorry. What's the date on when this would switch, Senator?
It's 2024, January 1 of 2024. We have January 1 on all the dates because that's what the insurance industry requested last year if we were going to do this.
And further question?
Senator, Delegate Sullivan.
And just out of curiosity, Senator, why did you pick that date?
Had we picked January 1, 2024, because we thought that would be enough to put the carriers on sufficient notice to be able to make this change.
No, but why 2024?
Same answer.
Okay. And one further question, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sullivan.
I know you gave us some statistics, Senator, on inflation, and time value of money and all that. Where would this put us in relation to other states? As I recall, the first time we talked about this, the original bill would have put us near the top. We're obviously currently not quite at the bottom, but we're near it. Where would this put us with respect to our neighbors and generally other states?
I think Maryland is at $30,000. DC might be also. $50,000 would put us tied with Maine, which is the top. And I believe they're also considering some of the legislation for $50,000 in some other states. I got a call from a legislator in Nebraska who told me he was working on a similar bill in his legislature. So I believe there's other action around the country as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And by the way, and as I said, we're at 5% of Europe.
Other members.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Delegate Weber.
I heard that.
I don't want to be like Europe, but I guess my question for the patron is this: the reason that we carry insurance is to to cover costs if things go wrong. And if we're going to adjust this cost, is our like uninsured liability insurance coverage, like the minimum and all that stuff, is that currently insufficient to cover most auto accidents right now?
Mr. Chairman, I would say it's in terms of most accidents, no. But in terms of, I can tell you that for most accidents, the dollars involved here are fairly minor. If you're talking about rear enders and fender benders and sore necks and things. But I can tell you, at least in my personal injuries, only maybe, 20, 30% of my practice, depending on the year. And I probably see 2 or 3 cases of mine come through my office a year where there's a $25,000 policy and somebody's got $100,000. I even had a wrongful death case once where there's only $25,000 of coverage available. It happens a lot for those of us who practice. And I don't know if the Bureau of Insurance has ever, looked at any data for how many $25,000 settlements there are, but it's really a tragic problem. I think a lot of people, if they realize that not only was the coverage a protection for when they hurt people, but if somebody hits you and they don't have enough insurance, I think people would actually buy higher coverage because it's really not that expensive to increase your coverage to 50 or 100,000.
Thank you.
All right, we do have registered speakers, quite a number, in fact, for all of these bills. Delegate Weber, do you have a follow-up? Okay.
Not right now.
We have a long list of registered speakers, so we need to move through them very, very quickly, and I apologize to them in advance. I'll ask each speaker to speak for not more than 1 minute. We have Robert Bradshaw for the Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia. Mr. Bradshaw.
Mr. Bradshaw, please mute your microphone.
This is Bob Bradshaw. I'm sorry, I'm going to let Joe Hudgens take this one. I'm sorry.
Mr. Hudgens.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for my time here. We supported this bill. We support the increase in minimum limits. We think the 60 and 25 is a better solution than the 50, 140. But we can support the lower limit of 30, 60, and 25.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, quick question.
Delegate Sullivan.
I'm sorry. Mr. Hudgens, who are you here testifying for? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm with the Independent. Virginia. I apologize for that.
Independent.
Insurance Agents of Virginia.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, next we have Mark Dix from VTLA. Mr. Dix.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Mark Dix on behalf of the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, speaking in support of the bill. SB 1182 is a fiscal responsibility measure. Every single state has one. And our law has not been updated since 1975. And the plain and simple fact is that $25,000 in liability coverage is not enough to require of our fellow citizens. It doesn't provide enough coverage for victims except in the most minor collisions. It doesn't cover the medical expenses, the lost wages, past, present, and future. It also doesn't provide enough coverage for the tortfeasors who cause accidents. The sky will not fall with this modest but needed increase in automobile liability limits. At $30,000, $60,000, the premium increase is absolutely negligible, surrounding it. At the $50,000 level, according to data provided by the Independent Insurance Agents of Virginia, looking at State Farm, Nationwide, Progressive, and Travelers, for a 19-year-old male, you're looking at an increase of, on average, $12 a month. And for a 43-year-old male, an average increase of $3.65 a month. And that's to get double the coverage when it goes to $50,000.
Mr. Dixie, please.
Yes, we believe that it's time to take this law out of the Gerald Ford era and into the 21st century, and hope will be the subcommittee's pleasure to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Jeremy Flax. Mr. Flax.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I practice personal injury exclusively, and I've done so since 1979, and I've lived with these limits of 2550 since then. I can tell you that unlike Mr. Surovell, I have dozens and dozens of clients who are inadequately compensated and inadequately insured with these minimal limits. Medical costs, as we all know, have gone up tremendously since the 1970s, and most of the damages that are paid out are based on medical costs and medical procedures, and it's just high time that a change was made. I'm sorry that it may not be 50 or 100, but I certainly support 30/60. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Mr. Flax. Next, we have Cynthia Hudson from State Farm, followed by Karen Anderson at Troutman Pepper. Ms. Hudson.
Ms. Hudson, please unmute your microphone.
Mr. Chairman, I believe she had to drop her other obligation.
All right, let's go then to Karen Addison, followed by Eric Ryson for the Virginia Chamber. Ms. Addison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Karen Addison, Troutman Pepper Strategies, representing American Property Casualty Insurance Association. I think we can live with the 30, 60, 25 limits, but I do want to point out that no other state has a property damage limit over $25,000. So I know that we've heard something to the contrary that this is not enough, but there's no other state that goes above 25,000. So I wanted to leave you with that.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we have Eric Ryson from the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, followed by Andrew Kirkner. Mr. Ryson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We'd like to associate our comments with Karen Addison and Troutman. We appreciate the amendment to the levels and still share that one last concern that she had. So thank you for the time and the work on this bill.
And thank you, sir. Next, we have Andrew Kirkner, followed by Anthony Hayes. Mr. Kirkner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Kirkner on behalf of the National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. I'll just make my comments super brief. We are not opposed to the increase to 30, 60, 25. What we would oppose, Mr. Chairman, and continue to oppose is the built-in escalation that this bill contains. If these limits do go up to 50, 140, they would make Virginia the highest limits in the country. They would be tied with a number of other states. They would also be far out of line with the states that surround Virginia. The amendment would bring Virginia an increase, and it would match our limits with contiguous state North Carolina. But that escalation clause that's built into this amendment would in fact make Virginia the highest in the country. We'd ask the committee to remove that portion of the bill, but we would not oppose the increase to 30/60. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anthony. Mr. Hayes from Enterprise.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. My name is Anthony Hayes with Enterprise. I've been serving the last 2 years here in Richmond, Virginia as an area manager. And we respectfully do oppose Senate Bill 1182 due to the fact that this bill is going to double the limits of liability coverage. And the people that are going to be affected by that are the people that I serve each and every day. Currently right now, Virginia has the 17th lowest rate of uninsured motorists in the country. but with the passing of this bill, that is very likely to increase. 43 other states are carrying the limits that we carry right now. And once again, if this bill were to pass, we would have the highest limits of property insurance in the entire country. So once again, that cost is going to be passed down to our customers and the people that I serve each and every day. And ultimately, I never think it's a good time to raise insurance rates for hardworking Virginians. And especially now is definitely not the time. So please vote no on Senate Bill 1182. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. And finally, we have Kevin Logan. Mr. Logan.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Logan is not present. That concludes the speaking list.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers. Senator Surovell, just a quick comment from me. I think that, my sense of the subcommittee is that we would support an increase to 30/60/25, which, as I understand it, matches North Carolina, West Virginia, Maryland, and essentially every other state around us. I think there might be some issue with doing that automatically or raising it to 50 in 2 years. Would you consider an amendment which strips off the automatic increase after a 2-year period?
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that if that amendment were to be put on the bill, I'd probably put the bill in conference.
All right. Questions or comments from the
I'm
committee?
happy to talk about, a longer period of time for the, another year or something for 50, but we got to get up to $50,000. We're going to be arguing about this every year till it happens.
I got it.
That's where I think this is probably going.
Question.
Delegate Weber?
Yeah, so question for the patron. Or 2 questions.
Sure.
So did he say that, like, if you've got a auto insurance policy like I do, say it's $700, or in my case for 2 cars, however much, you said it was $700, it'd be a $63 increase on a $700 bill, like an insurance bill?
If you have a $700 minimum policy, my guess is at your age, you probably have more coverage than that, than $25,000 on a $700 policy at your age. But if you're talking about a 20-something young male, yeah, according to the DMV study, it was like a $60 per period increase.
Okay, and this only affects that type of person, correct? Because they're the only ones that want this type of coverage.
It affects anybody who has a $25,000 policy. I mean, I've seen 60-year-old people that didn't realize they should buy more insurance who had $25,000 policies because they just weren't thinking about it.
Gotcha.
Right. Other members, or is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Sullivan.
question for Senator Surovell.
Delegate Sullivan.
Senator, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but we've been kicking around those increases of 63. I thought I understood you to say that that's what the number would be for your original bill. Was that what the number is going to be for your substitute?
Chairman, the substitute is 30/60 for 2 years, starting January 1, and then it goes to 5100 starting January 1 of 2024. That's what the substitute says.
Mr. Chairman, didn't put my question properly.
Okay.
In terms of increased premiums to the insured, you were just talking to Delegate Weber about that. Were those numbers tied to your original bill, or are those numbers tied to the substitute?
Those numbers are tied to 5100, not 30/60. 30/60 would be way lower.
That was my question. And
Got it.
One follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sullivan.
Do you, Senator, or frankly anyone here with you, know what the increase for an average Virginia consumer will be for the slimmed down version of your bill that we're looking at now? Do we know?
I'm sure it's in the DMV study, which I could pull up and probably figure out the answer in about, if you gave me 2 minutes, but it's peanuts.
And I would remind the members, we have about 30 minutes to do 3 more bills. So we have to cover some ground. Other members have questions for the patron.
Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, I have a motion.
Delegate Scott.
Move to report the substitute.
All right, there's a motion to report the substitute.
I have a substitute motion.
There's
Well,
substitute.
I don't know if it's a substitute motion.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm aware that the senator doesn't want to be back in front of us every year, but I, for one, have a hard time predicting what the insurance market's going to look like 3 years from now. So my preference would be to strip out the escalator clause. But I understand there's a motion on the table, and we'll have to see how that goes before we can get to my motion, I suppose.
Speaking, Mr. Chairman.
I did not hear a second on Delegate Scott's motion. Delegate Scott, you've heard Delegate Sullivan's suggestion. Would you consider that a friendly amendment?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. He's taking out the escalator.
Yes,
The following years.
that's correct.
I'd like to hear from the patron. See what I know he probably won't want to go in a conference on it. I'd like to hear what the patron thinks on it.
Senator Surovell.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just, to be straight, if that's the bill that emerges, then this will probably be in conference. So,
All right.
I mean,
Well, in that case, to get it out of here, I'll accept the substitute.
All right, then the substitute with Delegate Sullivan's amendment, or the substitute is offered by the patron?
Substitute as with Delegate Sullivan's amendment.
Then the motion before us, as I understand it, is to report the bill as with the substitute to 3060, with stripping the escalator clause. Is Delegate Sullivan, is that your motion?
It is, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, that has been duly moved and seconded. Any discussion from the committee? Hearing none, let's open the roll.
Mr. Chair, not to correct you, but the House wanted is at 1:30, so we should have until 3:45. So 45 minutes should be remaining for us.
All right, thank you, sir. Gives me a little bit of time. I know that IT usually needs a few minutes to set up. All right.
Delegate Weber, how do you wish to vote?
Aye.
All right.
Delegate Weber votes aye.
All members having voted, close the roll. Senate Bill 1182 reports with substitute as amended 6-2. We thank you, Senator.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.